Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Alex Truszkowski. I work for Nichino America, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about tolfenparad and introducing this new chemistry for Colorado potato beetle control, something that I think most Michigan potato growers would say is becoming a more increasingly difficult pest to control. Before I begin, I want to thank the MPIC for the opportunity to provide this presentation for educational purposes. Okay, so what is tolfenparad? Tolfenparad is an insecticide and a fungicide, pretty interesting molecule. It falls under the IRAC group 21A and the FRAC group of 39. It's a mitochondrial complex 1 electron transport inhibitor. This is affectionately known as a METI. And how that chemistry works is it disrupts and blocks cellular respiration. Again, it has some fungicide capability as well, as it seems to work well on downy mildew and the mildew complexes as well. As most people know, those pathogens also respire, so thus that's how you get the control of the mildews. In terms of resistance management, this is a new mode of action, as I already mentioned. It is complete broad spectrum for pest control in potatoes. Our public enemy number one is Colorado potato beetle. However, you will see tolfenparad used in the Texas area for control of psyllids and the reduction of zebra chip virus. And then typically your potatoes grown in the Pacific Northwest will generally have more of an aphid target pest. To date, the good news is no resistance issues have been reported with the chemistry anywhere nationwide. All right, so I mentioned that we're a unique IRAC classification. Just to kind of go over that, I've got a list there of the most commonly used insecticides to control Colorado potato beetle. And starting from left to right, you can see I've got the neonic classic chemistry. This would be stuff like imidacloprid, thiamethoxam, and clothianidin. Your group 5 would be your spinosids. A lot of people will recognize that as Black Hawk. Group 6 is your abamectins. Then you have a premix for cormorant of using the Ryman along with a sale or acetamiprid. Group 15, that is Ryman or also novaluron. And then there at group 21A, you'll see that Torac sits all by itself, tolfenparad in that IRAC class. To finish up, your diamides are typically in premixes or by itself. So your 3 plus 28, it generally goes under Besiege. 6 plus 28 is Manecto Pro. And group 28 in general is your chlorantraniliprole or cyantraniloprole chemistries. Okay, and so what's happening is the neonics being used up front or at plant, the residual activity is being reported as decreasing over time. These have been used because of their ease of use and just what once used to give you residual control clear till July 4th is now being reported as, sometimes losing efficacy towards the middle of June. And what that does is that creates an opportunity for more foliar insecticides to be used. I guess from the grower standpoint, unfortunately, they have to make more applications in order to get the control they once did. Okay, so there's been a lot of prolific use of many of the foliar options available to the market. You see I have written in there to avoid insecticidal insanity. And we all know what insanity is, but insecticidal insanity is using the same product over and over again and expecting the same result, which we know doesn't happen when certain chemistries are overused. It allows for insect resistance management, of course, tolfenpirad, and the key is to rotate between, not within, the chemical class groups. So mixing a 28 with a premix of a 28, or a 15 plus a 4A15 in that example, maybe not the best choice for IRM. So the idea is to try to rotate your chemistries between chemical classes as best as you can. With tolfenpirad, we are introducing that to maybe reposition the current spray programs for Colorado potato beetle. It's not a silver bullet or not designed to replace any chemistry. It's just to add another tool in the toolbox for more effective beetle control. Something to consider is that tolfenpirad is a contact-only insecticide, so the phenology of the crop is something to take into consideration. When you think about a potato plant in early season, it's not as big, it's not lapping over the rows, versus you get into mid-August where those veins get pretty deep and it gets more difficult to reach the target inside of that canopy and matted down vines. So, that's why our recommendation is to target first generation beetle populations. And one of the big reasons there is due to the phenology of the crop. It's much easier to make contact with beetles that are on a potato plant in mid-June than it is in mid-August. And additionally, sometimes you have overlapping pest pressure, and so you will also pick up leafhopper control with tolfenpirad, and that is another key difference versus some other chemistries currently available on the market. So you can get that additional early season control for aphids and leafhoppers, and as well as going after your Colorado potato beetles. Okay, so one of the questions I get asked quite a bit is, all right, so is tolfenpirad, Torac effective on all life stages of Colorado potato beetle? And the short answer is yes. Okay, so, and what we've seen, and it really played out well in 2020, is that our observed control is that with the early instars is lights out. It's definitely got a high % of control on that life stage, followed up by late instars. Those two are really, really susceptible to tolfenpirad. Then I would say adult control, and the reason I have it further down there is that, adults are constantly coming into fields. Also, they have an easier time kind of hiding under places and under the leaves. So you may not see 100% control on the adults, but you're still going to see 90% plus based on my experiences in 2020. And then finally and lastly is the egg control. And I guess the caveat there is that we have nice control, ovicidal control on the eggs. However, they have to be present at the time of application. So if you make an application of tolfenpirad and you come back there and look, you'll notice that you may have some trouble where some of them have hatched, and that's typically because the eggs were laid after the application was made. We are not able to control those. And again, as a respiration inhibitor, those eggshells are respiring there. You have microscopic pores in there, and that respiratory exchange is disrupted by tolfenpirad. So I think a better question is tolfenpirad has ovicidal activity, but can we reach them? So you've obviously got optimal timing of when to pull the trigger on sprays is important. We talked about the phenology of the crop, much easier to make good contact early in the season versus later in the season. Carrier volumes particularly important. You would not want to cheat down your gallons per acre for both air and or ground applications. And then you've got considerations around spray nozzles and pressure. Obviously, you want to have a higher spray pressure so that you can atomize that spray and get a really good coverage of the material. And then adjuvant selection is important. Any place that you can get a recommendation from your retailer or distributor on an adjuvant, anything to help the coverage. Okay, another question that comes in quite a bit is how fast does it work? And our experience is the crop protection piece, similar to a lot of new chemistries that have been brought onto the market, the crop protection is immediate. However, it may take up to a day or two to kind of determine the full results of the application. To be clear, this is not like some of the chemistries of 20 years ago where an application is made and the beetles are just going belly up on once you're on the turn row. These newer insecticides typically are softer. However, they may take a little longer to have them graveyard dead, so to speak. But your crop protection is immediate. It will work faster under warmer conditions, which generally is not a problem in the summer. And you're going to get about a week of chemical residual control. It's really, tolfenparad's hallmark is not for this long-lasting residual. It's more of a knockdown that can work on all life stages, but it can certainly give you about a week of residual control. Now, the total residual control can be easily impacted and extend well beyond that 7 to 10 day period, just based on what you've got going into the spray. Time of the year, if you're in late summer and your population is heavy, that's obviously going to be a more difficult situation to control your beetles. So high pressure and time of the year, then those things certainly come into play versus you're just beginning to see some beetles early season and you want to stay ahead of them and you make an early season application. That's a much easier situation. Very important and something that we saw in Wisconsin last year and work that Dr. Russ Groves has done for us at his Hancock Research Station is that we discovered the addition of pipernyl butoxide, also known as PBO, is highly recommended when you get into that situation of having your higher levels of infestation. The PBO is familiar to some folks who may have used it in combination with the pyrethroids many years ago. It has the same sort of effect with tolfenparad. And as we discussed, when you add an adjuvant in there, generally a non-ionic surfactant, that three-way combination is what we saw the best results with in 2020. Okay, so what is this PBO? As I mentioned, it's pipernyl butoxide. It is sold on the market as Exponent from MGK. There are also maybe some other manufacturers, but this is the one I typically recommend to folks because this is what we did our research on. And basically, Exponent or PBO, it's a synergist. And what it does is it interferes with the P450 enzymatic pathway, which is one of the pathways that a Colorado potato beetle uses to really kind of break down the active ingredients of insecticides. So Exponent has no insecticidal activity on its own, but when you use this to interfere with that mechanism that the Colorado potato beetles use, it allows the active ingredient to do its job much better. There's just no doubt that Colorado potato beetle are one of the world's best insects at just going through chemistries. And it's just part of that is just because they feed on toxic plants. So they just have this great ability to develop resistance or tolerance to many insecticides rather quickly. And so the PBO will help to raise the level of control of that insecticide susceptibility to tolfenparad. Okay, so a picture's worth 1,000 words. So this was from 2 years ago when we really got started with tolfenparad. And you can see the picture on the right. from Dr. Russ Groves in the Hancock Research Station in Wisconsin, you can see what his pressure was like for that trial. I mean, this is your untreated control that's basically down the sticks. And there on the left, you will see that is the combination of Torac at 21 ounces, tolfemparad, and Exponent at 5.5 ounces, or the PBO. And we really discovered that that's the right ratio to deliver that type of protection relative to the pressure he was seeing at the same time in this field trial. All right, so just to kind of summarize what I was able to present here today, tolfemparad is a Colorado potato beetle material first and foremost, and that is the most difficult pest in the Great Lakes potato market. We go after first generation populations because that is where we can get the best coverage on a potato plant with our contact only chemistry. It does represent a new mode of action. Anytime you get new chemistries to go after any type of pest, it's always a good thing. It's always good to have a different mode of action in your tool belt so that you can make a more robust program, spray program, and really integrate as many tools as you can to get more efficacy. Again, reposition your spray program, not designed to kick anyone out or replace anything. There's definitely appears to be room for all good products in order to control this pest. We'll work on all life stages, as we discussed, that are present at the time of application. Broad spectrum control, so a lot of times leafhoppers will be out there at the same time the early season beetles are starting to emerge, so kind of a 2-for-1 there. You don't have to add anything to the tank to control leafhoppers with tolfemparad. And, give it a couple days to determine the quality of the application. You should see at least a week of control. And then the 21-ounce use rate along with the 5.5 of PBO, particularly under high pressure. When you've got a mess on your hands out there, you are definitely going to want to have this combination put out on the acre. And the use of a spreader sticker, as we discussed, and non-ionic is fine. An 80-20, as a lot of retailers will sell them as, that's perfectly fine. Anything to kind of help that spray and its coverage. But watch your carrier volumes. Do not cheat those back. Sometimes people want to save trips by using reduced amounts of spray carrier, but really avoid that at all cost. It'll put the tolfemparad in a much more challenging situation where it doesn't need to be. And no one likes to have complaints or issues by doing something one-off. So by keeping that carrier volume high, you're gonna see a really good result. And again, high pressure, smaller nozzle size, any kind of tools that you have to just get that coverage. So with that is the end of my presentation. Again, I want to thank the MPIC for the opportunity to deliver this today. And I am going to be around right after this pre-recording to answer any questions you may have. And I want to thank you for your time.